welcome to On the House Movie Reviews and Podcasts, the show where we talk about movies, TV shows, and video games, because hey, whatever we want to talk about, it's on the house. Joining me as always is Dave.
Greetings.
And Kiki.
Hey there.
And folks, we're super excited today. We have a special guest. She's one half of Team Amazing. She's a project manager at Hasbro's. She was formerly a field representative for a congresswoman in Orange County. Go Ducks, by the way. It's none other than Campea.
Hey everyone, thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for being on. Well, folks, since we got guests on this one, we wanted to do a real special movie for you. And it's one that's near and dear to my heart, and I can't speak for the rest of you, but I get the feeling it probably is. It's the 1995 movie, The Goofy Movie. So, real briefly, I'll just say my introduction to the film is this was one of the movies I actually had a VHS copy of. Growing up, my family, we grew up in a trailer park, so we didn't have too many movies, but the ones we did, we basically ran on constant repeat. So this is one that's very special to me, and it's one I'm actually enjoying more and more the older I grow up, because you know when you're a little kid you just like seeing Goofy and everything, but as time passes you start noticing, no, this is a legit father-son experience. It's really something to behold.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think that it's exactly how you put it. I think Goofy has always had this kind of image of being one of Mickey's pals, and you had this perception of him if you saw him at any of the Disney parks. And so to see Goofy movie and how they elaborate on his story, and you find out that he has a son, and just like human beings, that you want to have a connection with your children, and that's what this movie targets, is that father-son relationship. And even to this day I can't think of a movie that really hits on that topic as much as it did in Goofy movie, which is really funny to think that, Goofy, the character, goes into such a relatable topic for us. But it was nice to see that Goofy has this life outside of just being, quote unquote, the goofy character of Mickey's gang.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Dave, what are your thoughts?
Okay, when I first saw this one as a kid, I was mostly through airings on Disney networks. I thought it was fine back then, but this is the textbook example of a film that, like you said, got better as I got older, and especially when I just rewatched it last night, so it'd be fresh in my mind for the podcast. Like, not like on a surface level way, but this is like a very low-key, dark movie. Like in ways that I'll have to elaborate on later, but
I don't know if I would say dark so much as very emotionally powerful, I think is what I would call it, but I'm sure we'll go into more details of why you think it's kind of a dark movie in just a little while. And Kiki?
This was one of the first times I had rewatched it since being a kid, and it definitely hit a lot differently since I saw it last. And I agree, it's very, very much a relatable topic. The awkwardness of trying to be a teenager and do your own thing, be your own person, but also be a family member. Like, all the feels.
Yeah, I mean, really, there's two key relationships at the heart of this movie. The one is obviously Goofy and Max, which just superb job by both the voice actors on that. They're obviously the heart and soul of the movie, and as you progress throughout the film, you totally see them both kind of come to terms with each other to the point that we're bonding, and when it's revealed that Max's big lie, the look of total betrayal on Goofy's face is, it's heartbreaking, really.
I want to say, like, since his name doesn't get brought up that much, like, Jason Marsden is legit one of my favorite voice actors, and this is one of his best roles.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. I think for this 1995, this type of animation, which, you know, it's definitely evolved since then. The fact that they were able to bring out that emotion, especially in that scene that you're pointing out, is uh, it was just really good for that time, I think. And just the heartbreak that he had when he figured out what Max was up to. I rewatched it just like the rest of you last night, and it still resonates today, I think. The story is still relevant. I think the emotion is there. It's interesting to see Goofy in this light, and maybe that's kind of why you're calling it a little bit dark. For me, it's definitely an emotional movie, especially to see a character who's typically very goofy in nature. You know, he's really, really sad when he finds out that Max has betrayed him and made that choice in front of his face, right? Because I think a few minutes before that scene, Goofy figures it out on his own, I think thanks to the help of Pete, by seeing the map. But then when his son, he already knows the betrayal has been set in motion, but when he gives his son the choice, he gives him a second chance to make another choice. And Max still goes with that decision. It's just like heartbreaking to see that look on Goofy's face.
It is, and they draw him ticked off in that moment. Like, as a father and son, you know, throughout the montage there, you see them starting to come to terms and bond with each other, and just the look of anger, thinking everything that this trip's been for is a total wash because his son will lie about the whole reason they're there. It's just a brilliantly done bit of animation there with the faces.
I mean, this film, more than any other I know of, just nails the feeling of being on a vacation you didn't want to go on.
Yeah, I will say there are certainly elements of that. I mean, for example, there's the Possum Park there, which I kind of always get a kick out of because that was Disney kind of making fun of itself there, which, especially back in the 90s, you didn't see all too often.
Yeah, there's a lot of Easter eggs too. I don't know if you guys noticed.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in addition to the possum theme park, you know, you see Little Mermaid kind of in the background, and the fixtures in that hotel they were staying in.
Mm-hmm.
I like that they did that, right? I like that they make light of even the character at the end. I think that's singing with Powerline. She kind of reminds me of Ursula, for example. And I don't know if that was a specific like the carbon copy of Ursula or just happened to be very similar, but I would like to think that they were kind of making fun of their own properties as well.
See, it's funny. I always thought that, but I just thought it was me who had that opinion and no one else shared it. So it's nice to have a second person vouch it.
And
Well,
also,
I am validating that.
and they flat out name drop Walt Disney twice.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I want to know, in the context of this universe, who is Walt?
That's a great question.
Yeah, that could be another movie in itself.
It's wibbly wobbly, timey wimey stuff.
Though between this and like the sequel they did later, it is so weird to see in a cartoon animal world movie like just real brands being mentioned, like not obvious stand-ins, like seeing real things mentioned. To this just strange, like MTV, pay-per-view, ESPN.
Yeah, especially in the sequel, which we won't be going into too many details, but that last half of the movie was basically a promotion for ESPN and the X Games.
Disney owns everything.
That's true. Before this podcast, I did just a little bit of research into the making of how this kind of came to be. Now, obviously, Goof Troops, where a much younger Max and Goofy were together on a Disney afternoon show. And following the success of that show, it was greenlit by Katzenberg to turn it into a movie. And he kind of said, hey, make this a road trip movie. So it was mostly the team from Goof Troops who were still working on it. Obviously, they recast Max, but everyone else was still involved. Well, then they slowly over time just put together this really well thought out movie. One of the interesting notes, though, is that originally Katzenberg did not want Goofy to speak in his traditional voice. He wanted him to have a normal, everyday voice, like how I'm speaking to you, almost.
Would they
I
still
think
have
that would have.
or they would have cast somebody else?
No, it would have been the same actor voicing him, but they just would have had him do his normal voice. And he actually recorded like 2 weeks of it before Roy Disney and Michael Eisenberg stepped in. It's like, no.
Yeah, I think I read somewhere, like looking at trivia, that the voice recording took over 2 years for this.
Yeah.
I'm glad they didn't go with that idea. That would have ruined the entire thing.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you're there for Goofy. You want to hear Goofy's voice. But also some fun facts on this movie is obviously it wasn't considered a priority by Disney. It wasn't The Lion King. It wasn't Pocahontas. So they actually farmed out a lot of the animation to their French studio, which is why it's kind of got a different look than all the other Disney movies that came out at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Which
They did excellent.
Yes, I will say that opening scene with Roxanne and Max where he's running through the wheat fields, just the way the wind blows through them, it's absolutely breathtaking what they did there.
Yeah, I didn't see any dip in quality. I don't know if you guys noticed anything, but I mean, yeah, it's definitely not the same exact animation as what you would have been used to with at least like the princess movies that were out at the time, or even Lion King, as you said. But I don't think it suffered in quality by it being farmed out.
No, not at all. Though the funny behind the scenes bit that I did learn is apparently for Goofy's iconic it was very difficult for the French artists to figure out how to animate the vocal movements for that because there was a translation error in between in what Americans heard and what the French commonly heard. The French commonly heard it more as a guh versus a guh. So just an interesting tidbit there.
Yeah, I never would have known that.
No.
Well, while we're moving on, let's talk about the other main relationship in the movie, Roxanne. Which, I don't know about you guys, but for me, they absolutely nailed that early high school teenagers wanting to flirt with each other, but they're so awkward around each other that they don't know what to do, and it's just adorable what they do, how they animate both Max and her in their interactions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're definitely really good at. Sorry.
Go ahead.
They're really good at capturing like the emotions and the feelings without having to say much at all. Like, you could feel what they wanted to say.
Yeah, it really like made those scenes very uncomfortable a bit because it brought me back at least to those days of having a crush on someone at school and like how do you tell them and you don't know if they like your whole entire day is spent thinking about whether your crush likes you back or not. And they did such a good job with their expressions and kind of like their gestures with Max constantly having his hands in his pocket and kind of like crouching down and she's also very shy. She's such a cute character, you guys. I think that I love that they didn't have to go the Disney princess, like she has to have this archetype body and shape. They really went with what I would think is like a natural figure for a woman. And they got that kind of like 90s or mid 90s, like very nice, like voluminous hair going for her. Just such a cute character, and like the fact that I think she doesn't even realize that she's like a beautiful character. I feel like she's still got so much of that shyness that it's almost like she doesn't see herself in the way that everybody else kind of sees her, if that makes sense.
Especially with they do a brilliant job with the animation on her where it comes across very clearly. Hey, she's also had a crush on Max for some time, but they're both so awkward that they don't know how to approach each other about it, let alone realize that they both have a crush on each other.
And it's impressive how much they managed to do when you think that she's really not in the movie that much. She's in the first act, and then after they take on the road trip, you don't really see her again until the ending.
Yeah.
One thing I like too about Roxanne is even though we didn't spend that much time with her, you got the feel that she was in, speaking of, schools and middle schools, the cliques, she's in the popular crowd, but she's so humble. And she's not, like you said, like the princess archetype kind of thing. And she's just a normal girl, just trying to figure out how to talk to her crush too. And they made her really sweet.
And I will say, I was watching this the other day because Kiki was house sitting for us while I was out of town for my brother's wedding. And when we got back, we kind of decided to watch the movie together. And her son, he's kind of at that age where he doesn't want to admit he likes girls. So he was kind of watching the scenes with Roxanne, kind of going like, "Oh, get past this." Then peeking between his fingers, totally watching it and enjoying it.
Oh yeah, he was very bashful about the romantic scenes.
I will say,
go ahead.
The remark I made earlier about how I think there's a low-key level of darkness to it. First off, the whole road trip plot is kicked off by the implication that the death penalty exists in this universe.
Oh man.
Yeah, because Goofy is apparently legit worried Max could be sent to the electric chair.
Yeah, if
that's
the
right. He does
principal
say
said that. Yeah, in today's world, if the principal said that, they would probably lose their job.
Oh, for sure. But I'll be honest, that principal would just have to say inconceivable, and I'd be like, okay, you know what? I'm good with this.
And also, this is more implication than anything outright shown, and maybe I am overthinking this, but in terms of relationships, they never use this word, but Pete's basically kind of being abusive to PJ.
Yeah, you kind of wonder what he did to put the fear of God into him that much.
I mean, the most we ever see of the punishment he gets is he just has to clean the RV, but the way they talk, you have to wonder it has to probably be worse.
Yeah, I feel so bad for PJ. I think, Pete says, "Do you want your son to respect you or to love you?" Or I think he says something like that, right? And he's trying to draw a clear difference between the way you parent and trying to convince Goofy that the way he parents is the right way. But you're right. You wonder what type of abuse that the kid has gone through to be trained to the fact that to the point that he's terrified when his dad asks him to do something.
Just the
how quick he.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. And just how quick he responds when his name is screamed at him.
Though I do love the reversal of how as adults we can tell Pete's giving him bad advice for most of the movie, but at the critical moment of the betrayal, Pete's the one in the right.
I wouldn't say he's 100% in the right, but definitely has a point.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's kind of like real life. No person is wrong all the time, and no person is right all the time.
Mm-mm. Everyone makes mistakes.
Yeah. And to be fair, I don't think they're ever implying that if this is abusive, that it's flat out hitting him or anything, but it's still Pete needs parenting lessons badly.
Yes, this is where his wife should have came in.
And I did read maybe just 2 months ago, the director confirmed on Twitter that the reason his wife and daughter from the TV show weren't in it was just because they couldn't find a way to work them into the script.
Makes sense.
So it leaves the question: is this an alternate continuity from the show, or is it just like the same but just with major characters missing?
I think it's the same, just because there was also never a scene where it outright said they aren't here. I mean, we do know, thanks to recent DuckTale episodes in the reboot, that those two apparently share the same universe.
That's a cool fact. I did not know that.
Yeah,
Wait, was there a deleted scene that said they were missing, or?
I don't know. I think
I thought you said like there was something that said they were not there. I guess I just misheard you.
Yeah.
Well, whether it was purposeful or not, I do appreciate the storyline where it's really focused on the dad figure. Oftentimes you see, at least in the Disney princess movies, it typically tends to be the mother or the mother that is alive. You know, the father passed away. I don't know why that seems to be like the structure for those Disney princess movies, but it always happens that way. It's nice to see, like I said at the beginning, it's unique to see the father-son story come to light and their level of effort to try to bond with each other.
Definitely, and part of how they tell the story in doing that is through the excellent soundtrack for this movie. Like, even the songs that you think should be just the big pop numbers by the Powerline character, when you actually listen to the lyrics, no, they're furthering on the story. The first one's about wanting to be noticed by Roxanne and seen as being cool, while the other one, Eye to Eye, is literally about seeing each other, meeting each other halfway.
I'm curious if we can consider this a musical, because I mean, usually musicals and songs do just that, you know.
I would.
And
but
yeah,
I mean, it's like 3 songs sung by the characters. Is it 2 or 3 Powerline songs? I think that's enough.
Yeah. And the Possum song.
oh, can't forget the Possum song.
I'm mostly bringing it up because that was Pat Burnham's last role, and the guy's an icon, so got to give a shout out to him real quick.
My all-time favorite song from this is the Open Road song.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Like, and did you see that video where in 2015, like Bill Farmer and Marsden got together for the anniversary of the movie, and they did a duet of it live?
I did, actually. And speaking of the songs, it's actually become a thing on YouTube of people recreating songs from this movie in live action. The first one to do it was the After Today video that I'll provide a link in the description to if you haven't seen it, but it definitely says something about the fan community. I mean, when it first came out, it was just kind of seen as this, honestly, we just fired Katzenberg, so we're not going to really do much with this movie since he was pretty involved with it. But now, as like the generation who grew up on it has gotten older, it's really kind of being seen more as a true underrated Disney classic that it is.
I almost think that like you'd have to update like the pop culture, but I think this might have been more successful in the 2010s than it was in the 90s.
It's possible.
I'll just add on to watching it last night. I completely forgot how much music was in it.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to agree with you guys. It watched very much like a musical. I could absolutely see this as like a live stage show if they wanted to. And I remember watching it when it came out and thinking, wow, the soundtrack is so appropriate for, you're right, to build the story and to kind of move it along. But every tune was so catchy. It like sticks in your head. Even after I finished watching it yesterday, I had to look up Tevin Campbell perform the Eye to Eye live at a D23. And it was just kind of this rabbit hole of, oh my gosh, I remember Tevin Campbell. And I remember loving and replaying that part of the music because I had a VHS tape of it at the time, just like rewinding that part over and over again. And just every song, every lyric resonating in some way when I was that age. But now watching it at my age now, it's wow, it's even much more powerful. Some of those songs, like I was thinking, oh my God, even Eye to Eye is very relevant with what's going on in the world today, right? Like if everyone could see each other eye to eye, like there could be some connection there. No, and I think I'm going really far deep into like my analogy of Goofy movie, but it's true though. Like I think there's a lot, the music there is part of what makes this movie special to me, but I think it resonated in the 90s, and I still think that the story as well as the music is relevant to what's happening today.
Yeah,
So what we're saying is the music stands out above the crowd, even if it has to shout out loud.
Even if you have to shout out loud, yeah. Agreed.
No, I'll totally agree with you just about deep dive into this movie. This is a movie you can deep dive into. I mean, the relationship between a father and a son, I mean, especially for Disney movies, when do you see that being tackled? Like
Lion
Aladdin
King?
3? Guardians of the Galaxy 2, if that counts?
Yeah.
Can't
Yeah.
really think of too many others.
And one thing I can admire about this movie is that it's so clearly the 90s, but that I don't think the fact it's very much of the time like lessens its impact.
No, not at all. I mean, realistically, aside from a Kmart Blue Light special and a few other things here and there, it could be set in modern times fairly easily.
Probably the lingo everyone would be using would be much different. But
Yeah, that's true.
and Goofy would try to dab.
Oh no.
Do you guys have a favorite song from the list?
Oh, he said mine's Open Road.
Yeah.
And Stand Out, or whatever that one's called again.
Sounds great too.
I go back and forth on which song's my favorite. I actually bought the vinyl record for this about 2-3 weeks ago because I'm that kind of nerd. And actually, the song I've been going back to the most is "Nobody Else But You." Just that I've not to go in great details, but I've been rekindling my own relationship with my father after my mental health stuff's kind of taken a turn for its worse, and now I'm on the road to recovery. But for me right now, that song's really having an impact of the healing, the letting go of the past and the wrongdoings.
That's a great one. I think that's also mine. I think it's a dialogue, right? It's a song, but it's also a dialogue of them. Like you're saying, it's cathartic. It's like healing for the both of those characters as they sing through the song. That's a really good one.
How about you, Kiki?
Yeah, I'm torn between Stand Out and Eye to Eye is also one of the top ones for me too. Like, and it embodies like the entire movie, because that's basically them. Is the lack of the communication at the beginning. All you had to do is talk to him, and then you have the big issue when he finds out and what Max had done, and then they work to repair that.
And I do like how, even though we talked about the way Max screwed up, I do appreciate the movie. Like Goofy, like genuinely did mess up at some points himself.
Well, sure. I mean, the whole crux of the movie starts with the two of them not communicating with each other or taking the time to understand each other.
I mean, if somebody forced me on a multi-week road trip out of nowhere, I would be pissed. One thing I realized, all the Goofy media, not just this movie, has never explored, like, who was Max's mom? Who was Goofy's wife? Because we now have to live with the knowledge Goofy has done it.
I'm actually glad you brought that up because I wasn't sure if I missed something in the movie or if there's something happening in the like other other story threads that are happening outside of this particular movie. But watching it today and watching it when I was a kid, I always thought that he was a single father. And I don't know if the rest of you thought that same way or if you just had an inkling that he had a mother, but she just wasn't on in the movie, just the same way that Pete's family wasn't in the movie.
Well, I remember there was one episode, this is going way back like 20 some odd years in my memory, to the Goof Troop episode where they very clearly state that no, Goofy's a single father and something happened to the mother at some point. They don't really tell you what it is, but it's kind of one of those heartwarming, at least we got each other episodes, even though we miss her.
So they're leaning towards dead.
Yeah, it's that or she's like Della Duck and stuck on the moon somewhere.
So I'm on the Googles, and I guess in the 1950s, his wife actually did have a presence, and she looks more human than, like, I guess, is Goofy a dog, or I think he started off as a cow.
He's a dog.
He's a dog.
But they still don't have a definitive answer as to where she went or why she went.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
I
part
see
of the
her.
problem with
Yeah.
knowing Goofy's actually gone through quite a few metamorphoses throughout his time period. There was a while where it was just the standard Goofy cartoons, and then they kind of started bringing him into the sports cartoons where there were 800 Goofies running around. And then there was a period where they kind of made him a more well-spoken, like what they actually tried for this movie, domestic kind of family man series is what they went for a while, and that's the series where he has the wife and everything. Now, I'm not entirely sure what the cutoff is on where they decided to kind of reboot it and where they kept it the same, but I feel like this is that Goofy who was the more domestic one and this Goofy are very different characters.
Yeah, I think, they definitely had to, not had to, but I guess naturally just go with the different change in the times and what works with the current world we're in.
I don't know, Dave. Maybe DuckTales will do an episode exploring it. They answered the long-standing mystery about Della Duck, so...
And just one other thing I like about this movie is I like how, like, the legacy characters from the show and classic Disney shorts have cartoony names, but the new characters just have regular names. I like whenever you mix those together.
Mm-hmm. Although, to be fair, Pete is a fairly regular name. It's really only Goofy, which I always got the impression that was more of a nickname for him than anything else.
But their surname is actually Goof, so...
Yeah, that's where I think the nickname kind of came from.
Which that made me giggle when they say Mr. Goof in the movie.
Yeah. Mr. Goof.
All right, well, with all that being said, let's move on to our section of what would we change in a remake. Now, this is pretty much straightforward. If you can think of anything you'd do slightly different, that's totally, just let us know what you think. Or if you think the movie's perfectly fine as is, doesn't need touched, then just say that.
I'd maybe, like, add 1, 2, at most 3 more songs. I'd probably give Pete and PJ a bigger role. And I made this joke in the chat earlier, but I would just, like, have the film end right after Goofy's car explodes. He's dead. The end.
Gosh, I think for me, if anything, because I do feel the pace is right. Like I like the length of the movie. It's just under an hour and a half, I think. But I would say probably a reciprocal learning experience for Pete and Peach, in the same sense that Goofy and Max are able to connect and really understand each other by the end of it. I would love to see that resonate back with Pete and Peach. Um, just for the sheer fact that I hate to think that Peach to this day is still taking orders from Pete and living in this like militaristic like lifestyle with his father.
Yeah.
I would love to see kind of just like that, a little bit of closure on that side. Even though they're not the main characters, it would have been nice to everybody to kind of learn how to build the relationship and grow and understanding for each other.
Because I think the hotel scene is like the last big scene with Pete. He just
Yeah.
like realizes a brief cameo near the end.
Kiki, how about you?
I know she's not as big of a character, but I think it would have been interesting, like anytime that Max had thought of Roxanne, like if they kind of did like kind of like a fade away to what she's doing at the time he's thinking of her. Like I think that would have been really cute. I don't know.
As for me, I kind of agree with Anne that the pacing is so well done. So my two things I would want changed. One, maybe make that montage in the middle just slightly longer. Like add an extra 30 seconds or so, because they really do a lot of character growth in that one montage. And the second one has nothing to do with this movie, but I would, in future Goofy things where Mac's involved, bring back the character of Roxanne.
They did bring her back in an episode of that House of Mouse show.
Yeah, and she was supposed to be in the Twice Upon a Christmas episode, but that was a CG film, and at the time they could not do hair. So they ended up replacing her with some new girl with a short haircut. All right, folks, with that being said, let's move into our final thoughts and if we would recommend the film.
I would definitely recommend this one. Like, and unlike like Lil Nemo, I say this works whether you're a kid or an adult. You'll find plenty to like about here, and the character depth goes a lot more than what you're thinking, just based on the fact it's Goofy or even just a general road trip setup. There's a real lot to like about this movie. I'd say it's definitely one of the probably bigger cult classics among Disney's releases.
Yeah. So same. I think Goofy movie is one of those that I wish a lot more people had seen, but I have to believe that like my age in the 90s, I'm hoping like at least my demographic or that age group had seen it and grew up with it. It was so nice to revisit it last night, honestly, just because I hadn't seen it in so many years, and I think everyone's collectively said the same thing, that the story just holds up even today. And I wonder if it's just because it's titled Goofy movie, right? And you don't really get a sense of the depth of the story just from the title. But anyone who kind of looks beyond the cover of the VHS tape at this point, but anyone who looks beyond that will see that it is a story that is much more mature for, I think, that time, 95, like 1995, much more mature. I think it digs deep into relationships, especially a relationship that I'm particularly interested in, which is father and son. You don't see that often. It brings Goofy into this like different world, right? Like Goofy has had a relationship. He has had a child. He has a child that is going through his teenage years. Like all of this should resonate with kids, with adults. And then there's just a little love interest as well, which is really cute. And the auxiliary characters are all really awesome. You got what's his name, Pauly Shore, who where the heck is that guy nowadays? But and the girl from Blossom, like there's just like some nice little nuggets in there as well. So I highly recommend it to people who are listening. If you've seen it and you haven't seen it in 25 years, like watch it again, because I think especially during this time in this climate, it's such a feel-good movie. And even like the lyrics to the songs will probably resonate really well in everything that's going on in the world. So yeah, absolutely recommend it. Sing along with your family.
100%, I would recommend it. As a kid, enjoying the animation and the music, it's all fun, but watching it with you and your wife, Clancy, you can relate to it on so many levels. Just as an adult, instead of just enjoying it as a kid, there's so many things for grown-ups to just have a blast with and relate to.
Yeah, for sure. As for me, I'll be honest, if I were to rank my favorite Disney movies, this would probably make it into the top 10. I wouldn't say where just because I would have to spend several weeks figuring out that list, but it's definitely very high up there. This film, it has a very special place in my heart for both when I was a child and now that I'm older and kind of dealing with my mental health issues and trying to rebuild bridges that were burnt with my family because of some of my mental health issues. It just means it really is just one of those you must see feel good films. And
Yeah,
folks,
I wouldn't want to.
sorry, go ahead.
I say I wouldn't want to imagine childhood without this movie.
Oh, for sure. Well, folks, that pretty much wraps up this podcast. But before we go and say our goodbyes, Dave, it's your pick next. So why don't you give us a little tease about what we'll be talking about?
Well, even though we're not going to be talking about the sequel, we will be talking about something that's tangentially related to an element from that. We're going to be seeing our good friend the Birdman.
All right. And once again, thank you, Dave and Kiki, for joining us as always.
We're consistent.
And Campea, thank you once again for joining us on here. Let us know where the people can find you. And thank you again so much for agreeing to be a guest host on this.
Yeah, thank you, Clancy, Kiki, and Dave. Like, this was a lot of fun. You gave me an opportunity to talk about a movie I haven't had a chance to talk to anybody about in the group setting like this. So this was a lot of fun. You guys can follow me at Campea on Twitter as well as Instagram. And yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. And until then,
here.
folks, we'll see you next time.
Hi, folks. Clancy here. Just want to hop on real quick before you guys click off and just say a little message that I like ending these videos with every single time, and that's just a message on mental health, and that if you're out there struggling, which there's so many reasons why you would be right now, to not give up the fight, to push on for one more day, because I promise you, it may take a while, but it will eventually get better. I've been at the point where I've wanted to completely give up in my life, but I kept struggling and kept fighting. Even sometimes I didn't want to. I had to spend some time in the hospital just to get me in the right state of mind before I could even go to my own house and sleep without being a threat to myself. And my wish, if I could grant it to the entire world, is that nobody else has to suffer like that. It's not a fate I'd wish on my worst enemy. But if you are in the position where you struggle with this, just remember, it's not your fault. Our brain chemicals do things that we can't control sometimes. But if you ever do need the help, the suicide prevention number is 1-800-273-8255. Again, it's 1-800-273-8255. You're not alone in this battle. 1 in 4 adults suffer from mental health. It's time we end the stigma and raise awareness.